Hi, and welcome to the Bad Ass Breastfeeding Podcast, co-hosted by Abby Fearing, the Bad Ass Breastfeeder, and Dianne Cassidy, IBCLC.
Hello, this is the Bad Ass Breastfeeding Podcast. I'm Dianne, the lactation consultant.
I'm Abby, the Bad Ass Breastfeeder.
And we are at episode 19, and we're going to talk about spoiling babies. And last week, episode 18, I shouldn't even have to keep saying that because I'm going to lose track. Really, I just do that for me because then I know what the numbers are.
Yeah. They don't care what number it is.
Nobody cares what number it is. So we talked about co-sleeping. And, I realized kind of like halfway through that, the spoiling babies thing kind of goes hand in hand with that. Not for us, but for like a lot of people in society because they say, oh, you can't do this because you'll spoil your baby, That is probably one of my biggest pet peeves when it comes to maternal child health is the spoiling baby piece. And it blows my mind every time I still hear somebody say, can I hold my baby? Or my mother told me I was spoiling my baby. Or my grandmother told me I was spoiling the baby. Or this random jackass told me I was spoiling the baby. Like, I don't understand how that is still being put out there as a thing.
Yeah. So, let's get the record straight. It's impossible to spoil your baby. And I was at a conference with Dr. Jay Gordon, and he had this funny, he was like, somebody said something about like spoiling a baby by breastfeeding or something. And he was like, you can spoil a 3-year-old by giving them a cookie every time they cry, but you can't spoil a baby. And I just thought that was like perfect. Mm-hmm. It's like, there's ways to spoil maybe older kids or if you do like weird things like that. Because even the word spoil kind of like makes me grossed out.
Right.
Because like, why can you not just give a child what they want and need? Why?
What's wrong with that?
Why? Yeah. And if you're talking about a baby, then it's just impossible. It's impossible to spoil your baby. Pick them up when they're crying. Pick them up even when they're not crying. Hold them all the time. Right. Hold them as much as you can. This is what babies were spoiled. We were talking a lot last week about natural human behavior. Like that's normal. It's normal for your baby to be, on your chest. Get a baby carrier and hold them all the time. That's normal, and it's good for them, and it helps their brain develop, and it helps their, to regulate their body temperature. It helps your milk supply. Mm-hmm. It's all good for baby.
It's so funny because, as somebody who watches this, sometimes from newborn, like, I'll get moms at the very newborn, and sometimes they'll stay with me for long periods of time because they're really just, and when I say stay with me, I just mean like constant contact or come to my support groups or whatever. Mm-hmm. Those babies are the ones that are always more content. Just overall. Mm-hmm. If they are held more and fed on demand and responded to, if you are responding to your baby's needs, like last week we were talking about your baby doesn't want to be eaten by a tiger or a bear. So they're going to cry so that they can stay with you because that's where they feel safe.
That's their crying is their signal that they need something, that they feel unsafe, that they want you, that they need.
And if you are nurturing that and you are responding to that, you are going to build a security and a trust with your child that will take them on for the rest of their life. And those are the babies where, several months in, no, okay, I don't need to be so needy because my mom is right there. She responds to me every time I need her. She's there for every feeding. Those are the it's really the reverse. People think, oh, if I pick up my baby, they're going to be spoiled. No, if you pick up your baby, they're going to learn that you're there and they're not going to need to reach out to you as often as they do.
Right.
They're not.
Right.
It's a very, very well-known fact that those breastfed babies or babies that are, responded to, they are actually more independent and more secure.
Totally. Yeah. And people talk about because I throw the word attachment parenting around a lot because I like it. And I think it's a good description of things like, keeping your baby close and breastfeeding and all these things. And, but you hear people are like, oh, that attachment parenting thing, oh, that thing where you're just like with your baby all the time. And, it's like, well, yeah. And people are like, oh, that's not good for babies. So here, actually, attachment parenting is not just something that's made up. It's actually based on child development and the normal and natural human needs of a human baby. So it's not something that was just invented, this whole detached parenting thing that we've gotten into of the whole idea that you can spoil a baby, that babies need to be independent, that you need to keep them at a distance, that is new. Mm-hmm. throughout history, throughout, all human behavior and child development, keeping your baby close and meeting their needs, whatever their needs are, constantly and consistently, actually is based on child development and, human behavior, and leads to, like you said, healthy adults.
Yes. And those babies, they're seriously more content. They're more content babies.
Yeah.
It's just, and I'm not going to lie. We're not going to sugarcoat it. It's hard. It's hard to be an attached parent.
Parenting is hard. Nobody said it was going to be easy. Parenting is hard.
And you definitely lose part of yourself, and, you don't have time to yourself as much as you would if you, just whatever. But it's not forever. When your baby is little, they need you. When they're newborn, they need you. They just do.
Yeah. And I always question that when people are like, "Oh, that's so hard," because it's like, is it really harder than getting up every hour in the night to go to the room to feed them? Like, is it really harder than like listening to them cry?
Right.
I mean, these things are really hard. You lose more sleep. Anyone, even people who do practice, like, cry it out in those things that we say don't do, I say don't do, they're in complete emotional agony in the other room.
Right.
No one can just sit and listen to their baby cry. That's hard.
That's very hard.
It actually ends up being a lot easier when you just keep them, bring them close, get into a sleeping situation that's comfortable. You're going to sleep more. Your baby's going to cry less. You're going to have to get up less.
And what I also find with those parents is they'll say to me, am I supposed to be letting my baby try to sleep by themselves? Am I supposed to be, separating myself from them? Am I supposed to put my baby down and let them fall asleep by themselves instead of nursing them to sleep? Like, when I try to do that, the baby cries, and I feel like it's not the right thing to do. But they're doing that because that's the advice of somebody else. Their instinct is to not do that. But they're trying to follow advice that somebody else who doesn't live with them and doesn't know them is telling them to do. And it's like, follow your instinct with this. If your instinct is, this is how my baby is comforted, and this is how the whole family is at peace, then why aren't we doing that? Why are we fighting against that?
Right. I know. It's really odd. And I don't even know where it began. I think it began with the whole, like, formula. Here's moms having to, isn't this like, I should probably know more about this, but so, like, around World War II, more women had to go
to work.
Yeah. Go to work.
Mm-hmm.
And so they needed, like, a breast milk substitute.
Right.
What's the word? Substitute. And so then here comes formula, then here comes, everybody's working and everyone's needing to get, the sleep. And then we create this whole new culture that's created around the 40-hour work week. And now women, you don't get to have any maternity leave either. You get like 6 weeks and you get to come back to work with your vagina still sore. And, and dad, hey, you don't get anything. You're not going to be home to help at all.
Right. Screw you. It's,
And screw mom, just right. Like, because you can't, they don't let him be there to help her. And so now here we have it. We have like a $1 billion crib industry.
Right.
And, a $1 billion formula industry and all of these things that we've become really reliant on. And it's, again, like we said last week, if this is what you're doing, we're not saying that you're bad. We're just trying to talk about how we've gotten to this situation and how our instincts to keep our baby close are actually real and they're normal.
Mm-hmm. And people try to tell you that it's not, that you shouldn't be doing that. And you're not gonna spoil your baby by picking them up and consoling them. You're not. I mean, think of us as adults. If we cry, do we want everybody to ignore us?
Right.
You know? I mean, there was a couple of years ago, we had to put one of our dogs down. And I was actually at a friend's house. I was with a couple of doulas. Like, who else could you possibly be with when you have to find out you have to put your dog down? Like, to be with doulas is probably like the best thing in the world.
Yeah.
Because then I'm on the phone with my husband and I started to cry. And of course they're right there and they're hugging me and are you okay? And what can I do? And da-da-da. You know how horrible it would feel if people would be just like, ignore that? Like nothing, you know, like,
Right.
oh, well, she'll get over it. She just has to
Stop
learn how
crying.
to feel it out for herself and deal with it on her own way. Like, this is your baby. They don't know how to manage anything. They need you.
Right. I've heard things so outlandish, like it's good for your baby to cry because it builds their lungs.
Yeah, that used to be a thing, right?
Like that's like a thing. Yes, that used to be like a thing. Like, oh, it's good for them to cry because it makes their lungs stronger.
Who makes this stuff up?
I don't know, but your lungs are not muscles, so that doesn't even make any sense.
And how come stuff that we say doesn't get picked up like that? Like,
right.
I base my stuff on like actual research. That doesn't run rampant through the country as a new thing. Like, come on. Right.
It's become complete cultural norms, and it's, if you say, you know, and there's so much fear mongering and all this stuff that keeps it alive. You know, the things like, you know, picking up your baby or breastfeeding, extended breastfeeding, or, you know, picking them up when they cry and, you know, whatever, all the things that we're talking about. It's become there, and there's a lot of muscle behind it, right? There's a lot of these big, huge organizations that say these things.
Yeah.
You know, that say, you know, don't sleep with your baby, or don't, you know, you might roll on your baby. That's not happening. It's just not happening.
I mean, I don't know. We were reading something in the paper yesterday. No, it was actually a CNN thing that came up. We get these news alerts because we're crazy like that. But get these, you know, CNN news alerts. And it was something about, like, do not give your dogs this specific treat because it'll kill them. Like, that was the headline. So, of course, we're like, oh, God, I hope we're not giving our dogs that. You know, we look at it, 15 dogs have died. I'm not even kidding. That's what it said on the thing. Which, of course, it's sad when anything happens, but do we need to make this a national epidemic because 15 dogs have died? Like, there's just a lot of fear-mongering going on with anything, but when it comes to your baby, like, don't ever second-guess the fact that they need to be nurtured.
Right.
You know? And I have moms all the time that will say to me, if the baby cries and I pick him up and just put him to the breast because and they stop, like, is that bad? I hear that at least once a week. At least once a week. Is it bad if I do that? Is it bad? No, it's not. You're responding to your baby's needs.
You should do that.
You know, but somewhere along the way they heard it was bad.
Yeah.
They heard it was bad to comfort their child.
Yeah.
And I don't know why that's a thing. And I just don't understand.
Right. And I you know, that's interesting because another thing that is happening to us, our generation of parents, is the internet.
Oh my God.
And the 24-hour news channels.
Holy God.
Because there is not 24 hours worth of news to give you. So they start picking up anything and everything to make huge media sensations out of.
Right.
And there's no basis on this. Do you remember the summer of the shark attacks?
Yes.
There were actually less shark attacks that summer than any normal summer.
There's nothing else to do.
Like, sometimes my son is really into sharks, so you have to be careful. Like, you have to like he's like, sharks do not bite people on purpose. Like, they just think it's a seal. So, you know, he's like very mad at like movies like Jaws and stuff that make sharks look like manhunters.
Yeah.
And he is like, would be so mad at this whole summer of shark attacks because sometimes shark, you know, like a great white shark or something he eats meat. And there are sometimes, especially, they've showed like the underwater view of like a surfer on a surfboard. It looks like a seal. It looks like a fat seal with his like flippers. Mm-hmm. And so sometimes they bite, and then sharks they bite once and then they go, ew, that was bony and not a fatty seal. Yuck. And then they swim away. And so, okay, so I'm just telling you this because, so that's normal. Like, that happens every summer. around the world, there's like an average amount of time that happens. So the summer of the shark attacks, they even went back later and they said there were less that summer than any normal summer, but it was the biggest thing. And every single time somebody got bit by a shark, it was like, oh my God, another shark attack. What's happening? The sharks are lashing out at humans. And it was like it was insane. And it's just because they have nothing else to do. Like covering the stuff that goes on in the Middle East, covering all the like tragedies in the world only takes a certain amount of time. But now they've got 24 hours now, and they've got internet, they've got Facebook, they got all this stuff that they've got to fill this time with. Mm-hmm. And it gets out there, it gets into our heads, and we actually end up shaping behavior around it.
Oh, yeah.
Like I look at my newsfeed now, and I can see, I'll follow, like, Facebook pages about parenting and stuff like that. And I can see it. It's like, 10 reasons why breastfeeding too long could, bite you in the ass. And it's like, what? There's like, this is based on nothing, and it's clickbait,
Mm-hmm.
But there it is in some mom's newsfeed who's already being told that she's breastfeeding for too long. And it's just another thing that she's going to go, oh God, I should probably stop this, even though I don't want to.
Right. And I'll tell you, I totally fell into that whole shark thing. Like I totally did, because we spent, a week every summer in Myrtle Beach.
Uh-huh.
So I totally fell into that. And Tom was like, don't even start with the sharks. Are you kidding me right now?
It gets in your head.
It does. And he goes, like, he had to seriously break it down, because he goes, all right, let's look. We've got this coast to this coast, and there's how many miles, and there's how many people on and he like did the numbers and everything. He goes, when you break it, you got 3 people that got bit out of 800 million people that are at the coast every summer. Like, don't even come to me with this shark issue. We're going to Myrtle Beach and you're going to have a good time. Like, it was totally ridiculous. And I'm like, all right, you're right. All right. Like, but it gets in your head. It really does.
It totally gets in your head. And it is designed to get into your head, because then it creates frenzy and it creates all this stuff, that keeps you coming back, and it keeps the news stories alive. And then here we are making parenting decisions based on it. And, I'd rather have a bunch of people, like a little bit scared of sharks for a summer than people actually making breastfeeding and sleeping decisions about their babies based on this crap.
It's awful. And sometimes, that's why little titles, I'm sorry, I keep cutting you off. Sometimes those little titles aren't even what they're supposed to be, but they drag you in. And it could be that, you're breastfeeding for 10 reasons why you're breastfeeding for too long. And then you click on it and it's like, it's not even about that. Like,
right, exactly.
Just like that Time magazine. We talked about this a long time ago. Like the Time magazine cover with the mom that was breastfeeding, and people freaked out. That wasn't even about breastfeeding.
No, it was about attachment parenting.
Right. But it drew people in, didn't it? And it pissed people off because it was, it's crazy. The whole, how much the media blows things up because there's nothing else to do sometimes.
Right. I know. And it gets them all the ratings and all the things. And that's why my blog exists. That's why your blog exists. Why our entire practices exist, because we're trying to put out the information that's actually based on research and anthropology and, natural and normal human behavior.
And that doesn't
child development.
Right. And that doesn't say that you have to do things this way.
No.
But there's a reason why it's out there.
That's the thing. It's like, if you want to formula feed your baby, I don't care. I'll hold your bag while you feed your baby the bottle and sit there and tell you stories. I don't care. Right. Whatever. But you need to have the information. People deserve to have information. Mm-hmm. You can't just be making decisions based on money-making lies from a formula company that say that it's exactly the same as breast milk.
Right.
Well, but it's not. And you need to know these things before you make the decision.
And that comes to everything. And we should totally do, we'll have to put it on the list. Mommy wars. The whole mommy wars thing.
Oh, God,
because that's another thing that the media has completely blown up.
Totally.
And I am so offended by people that will not contact me about like weaning safely or cutting back on breastfeeding because they think I'm not going to be supportive because I'm a lactation coach. It's like, that has nothing to do with it. I want you to do what's right for your family, but I want you to have the right information. And when I teach childbirth classes, like, and this is a perfect example. I had a childbirth class the other day, and it was the class that we talk about medications. And I'm telling them all the information about medications and how it impacts the baby, and research-based, how it impacts the baby, how it impacts breastfeeding. And of course, people are looking at me like I am out of my mind, and I'm like, I'm not telling you to not get an epidural. I'm not telling you to not get medication. I'm not telling you that. I'm telling you to have the information so that you're not surprised later on at side effects or intervention or anything else that happens. But you would do that with any other medical or anything that happens in your life. You would question it, right? So why would you just automatically go with what somebody's telling you to do with your baby?
I know. People do more research when they're buying a refrigerator than they do when making decisions about their kids. And it's not the mom's fault. It's you just automatically think that these medical professionals are going to give you all of the information. But the sorry thing is they're not. They're not giving you. They don't know. Yeah, it's not their fault either. They don't know. Lactation and natural childbirth is not a part of medical curriculum. They do not have this information to give you. They're giving you the information that they've learned through hospital protocol wherever they work. They're not giving you the whole blanket of information and your various choices because they just don't know it.
Right.
Yeah. So, I mean, when you just, we bought like a dishwasher, and like I was agonizing over what dishwasher to get. I was just like, oh God, this one has this and this one has this. I mean, I spent like hours looking at different dishwashers. I did more research on dishwashers than I ever did, than I did at first with where my baby would sleep. I just went along with like the normal cultural thing. And I said, well, he's going to sleep in his crib. And I created this whole beautiful nursery that eventually was disassembled, having never been touched. Because it just, once I started looking into it and doing the research, that the same amount of research I did on the dishwasher, I was like, I don't want to do that. Like we're sleep. I can't, it's like, why can't I put my baby down? Why doesn't my baby get put down? Why does he cry every time I put him down? Well, because he doesn't want you to put him down. There's nothing wrong with your baby. Right. There's nothing wrong with your baby. Be like, oh my God, something's wrong with him. I thought that too. I thought, oh my God, something's wrong with him. He cries every time I put him down. So then I realized it was normal, and I got a carrier, and I brought him into my bed, and then we slept, and I walked around, and he cried less.
But you know what? The other thing that goes along with this too is that we're putting it all on the mom.
Yeah.
And this is another thing where, generations ago, you had a house full of people that were there to help you. You had a community of people that were there to help you, to come over and hold the baby for you. There's still cultures out there where their feet doesn't touch the ground for the first year of their life.
Yep.
Because that's their belief. And it's just, we don't do that here, obviously. But these moms, and I feel for them so much when they call me and they say, the baby is just crying and I can't put him down and I'm not getting any sleep, because they are the only ones responsible. Because dad goes back to work after a week, and we've, dissociated ourselves from anybody else, and we've displaced, and your family lives 800 miles away, and, we are left to do this alone. And that's the problem. And it shouldn't be like that.
It's true. Yeah, we're so isolated, and we're so dependent on these medical authority figures that also don't know anything. And so they're trying to give us answers, but they don't really know the answer. And so it's just like their opinion, basically. And everyone's just like roughing it.
They are. And miserable.
I was too. Yes, I was miserable, and I knew nothing. And, when I got into all of this stuff, when I got into like reading about, how babies sleep and how babies breastfeed and all that, when Exley came along 3 years later, it was, it was still hard, but it was so much easier than it was the first time, because I just knew so much more. I knew what I wanted. I knew what was normal. I knew, that I wasn't, it was impossible to hold him too much, that it was impossible to breastfeed him too much, that it was impossible to breastfeed him for too long, to all those things. It was impossible to spoil him by having him in my bed. And, it was a lot easier knowing that and it felt right. It's the other thing is that it feels when you're doing what's not grating on your instincts, like it just feels better. There's less stress. There's less darkness.
But it's so hard when you feel like you're going against what everybody else is telling you should
be doing.
That's
awful. And it makes you feel like you're crazy.
Right. Especially when it's something that you don't know what you're doing anyway,
Yes,
and you're like, okay, my mom who raised 18 kids told me I shouldn't hold the baby. Why am I trying to hold the baby when somebody who's obviously experienced told me not to do that?
Right. I remember our pediatrician telling us when Jack was 2 weeks old, she said, you can go ahead and put him in the crib, whenever you are ready, now is fine. And then, so the first night that you put him in there, leave the room and let him cry for 1 minute. And then go back in and pick him up. And then the next night, let him cry for 2 minutes. And then the next night, 3 minutes. And Josh and I are looking at her. We're looking at this lady and we're like, first of all, he sleeps in our room. And you should have seen her face. She had no idea what to say. She was like, oh. And then she just moved on to another topic because she had no idea what to say when we said that he slept in our room. It was just not something that she had been taught. She hadn't been taught how to respond to that.
And you know what the other thing is? You're probably one of the only people who's actually come out and said that directly to her because we know that everybody else that had been in her office had probably been doing the same thing.
Yep.
And just nobody said it.
That's the thing. People just stopped talking about it. Yeah, I stopped going to her and I went to we got a new pediatrician who's like my favorite guy. He's won like the Breastfeeding Friendly Award in Chicago like a bunch of times. And you go in now and that nurse always asks you questions at first before the doctor comes in.
Yeah.
And they're like, so do you have a family bed?
Oh.
And I'm like, yeah. I'm like, okay. They're like, well, what's your sleeping, crib or family bed?
Oh my God,
it's like
really?
The options. Yes, it's just one of the options. Or like family bed. And he's like that. He's like, that is so wonderful. You are such a good mom. And he goes on and on about this stuff. And he's like, your 6-year-old, is he still breastfeeding? And I said, and I'm like always with the like look on my face because he still nurses to sleep at night. And it's like one minute of my day that's like,
yeah.
And, I'm like, yes, he still nurses to sleep. And he's like, you are amazing. You are incredible. And I'm like, so I live in a big city. And I have a lot of options with like pediatricians, but there are people out there that do know this stuff. Mm-hmm. And there are people that will claim that they have pediatricians and medical people around them that do know this stuff. And, if you live in a small town, you might have like a couple of pediatricians there. You don't have a lot of options, but there are people out there. Maybe ask your friends who they see. That's how I got to know this guy. I just said, who's everybody going to? And a couple of people said his name and, kind of what he's into. And so I found him. So I don't know. That's just to say, like, if you don't like what the medical people are saying to you, they work for you.
Right.
They are not in charge of what goes on in your house. They do not get to tell you to stop anything that you're doing. And if you don't like what they're saying to you, then find someone else. Fire them. Fire them.
I always
work for you. You can fire them.
I always try to put it into like I'll get moms that are like, all right, should I wake the baby to feed him? Like during the day. Like,
yeah.
And I say to them, because everybody tells me not to wake a sleeping baby. And I said, if you let your baby sleep 5 hours during the day without a feed, that's fine if it's okay with you, but they probably will be up at night to eat. Like, I'm just telling you, like, they want to eat a certain amount of times a day in 24 hours. If you wake them during the day after like 3 hours because they're, sleeping to feed them, then more than likely you'll get a little bit more sleep overnight. Like, that's just kind of how it works. They're like, well, everybody tells me not to wake a sleeping baby. And I'm like, are those people at your house at 3 a.m? And they're like, no. well, then wake
Okay.
your baby up during the day if that works for you. Like, if you're like, no, because that was kind of me. Like, I wanted a nap during the day when my kids were napping, so I didn't worry about it. But if you are somebody who really wants to, like, you know, try to have a little handle on things, then, you know, wake them up. But the point being that people that are telling you what to do are not living your life. They're not in your house.
Right.
So,
And if it comes in the form of some sort of cliche like that, like never wake a sleeping baby, like question it, because, you know, we can't live our life by like things that sound cute when you say them.
right. And is it something that they were saying, you know, 80 years ago, that it probably doesn't make much sense now to do that? Like, it's just, but everybody's baby is different and everybody's baby reacts differently. And sometimes I just say to moms, give it a shot, see what happens. You know, like I had a mom the other day, do you think it's okay now to let the baby sleep during the day if they're sleeping? And I'm like, give it a shot. Doesn't work? It doesn't work. Like, it's your baby, you know, and there is no, like, if you're just responding to their needs, you're not doing the wrong thing. But what you do with your baby is not going to be the same thing that might respond well to somebody else's baby. Oh God, what happened?
God actually burst in the room and scared the crap out of me.
It sounded like somebody dropped something.
Actually just burst in. I was like,
My gosh.
that startled me, actually. Okay, sorry.
Like a bull in a china shop. But it's really very, do what's right for your family, you know, and responding to your baby's needs is not the wrong thing to do. That's never the wrong thing to do. Responding to your baby's needs, responding to your child's needs, that is never the wrong thing to do.
No,
if they
never.
need you, they need you. And trying to teach them how to take care of themselves at the age of 6 weeks is not necessarily going to work in your favor.
No. And yeah, if there's things that you're wondering about where to get the good information, then send us an email, because we can show you, you know, websites and researchers and, you know,
absolutely
that are talking about this stuff, where you
absolutely.
where you can read more about it.
And then, you know, when you read more about it and you kind of get a little bit better of a handle on it, then you can make a great decision for your family. You know, you can make a decision that your whole family is comfortable with.
Right.
And that's what's most important, really. That's what comes down to it. It's not mommy wars. It's not I'm right and you're wrong. It's nothing like that. It's what you do for your family after you have, you know, figured out what's best for you. Not what society says is best for you. What you think is best for you and your family. That's what it comes down to. Yes. Pretty much. That's it.
That's all.
And again, we've saved the world.
Yeah.
So now, like, last week we came up with something else that we wanted to talk about, which of course, I can't remember what it was. But this week, so I do think we should do a Mommy Wars thing, but at some point. But really, if you think of anything that you think we should talk about, email us. You know, be part of the Bad Ass community. We want to hear from you.
Yes, do it.
And we'll go from there. And next week, we'll talk about something even more fun. I'm pretty sure.
We don't know what it is because we don't have our list in front of us.
Oh, you know what? I do have my list
just
right
tune
here.
in. Oh.
Yeah. Touched out in bad days.
Oh, cool. All right. That's another one that can go on for days.
Yeah, that's a good one. So enjoy this one. If you haven't listened to any other ones yet, go back, listen to some of the other ones, and let us know if you have any questions, if you want any links to anything, if you want any additional information. This is how we do with our life, people. This is it. So
we're waiting.
We've got it. We're waiting. Yes, we're waiting for you. And we will talk to you next time.
Yep. Bye.
Bye.